Yeah, it usually notifies people. All right, so this is from my friend David, who's also, I believe, a Christian. His main question is about God's plan versus free will. Where does it begin? Where does it end? He's kind of having, he wants to, having issues debating this back and forth, So yeah, we're recording this, and the main story that he brought up was about the parable of the drowning man. Does people know what this is? There's a guy who's drowning, and then he asks God for, or somebody's going to come save him.
Oh, that's a joke. I don't think it's a real parable.
It's not in Wikipedia. It's named as the parable of the drowning man.
Right.
It's famous. It's a famous enough joke, I guess.
I've heard this.
But it brings up good questions, So I guess, to go over it again, there's like a guy, and there's flood waters rising, and he's asking God to save him. And of course, somebody comes on a boat or something, or they come to his house, and he's like, "Hey, you got to get out of this flooding." He's like, "Nah, God will save me." And then water raises up. He's on the roof, and he's like, somebody comes in a boat to save him. He's like, "No, God's gonna save me. I'm a very devout person. God, gonna save me." And then he ends up drowning or whatever, and goes to heaven. And then he asks God. He's like, "Well, what, God? Why didn't you save me?" And God was, "I sent you all this stuff. Why didn't you take any of the stuff that I sent you?" Yeah. And so, his main plan, or his main idea was like, how do we know what's in our control and what's in God's control? Like, where do we draw the line there? I don't know. We want to start with that, and then he has one case study, I guess we could go over. Does anybody have a clear line where they draw, where this is part of God's plan? Obviously, I'm sure.
I don't think that would be a good place to start.
Do you believe in free will then?
I'm agnostic on free will, to be honest. I kind of flip-flop on it. I think it's very intuitive, but there's a lot of good arguments against it. And a lot of the arguments for it are just kind of that like intuitive kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm still kind of agnostic.
Like saying like the earth is obviously flat, just look around.
Right, yeah. It feels like we have free will, but at the same time, we're all made out of like molecules and stuff, and they're all in motion because of physics. So I don't know.
So I guess the first question, is there free will? We'll go around.
Noah says, if you send him his way, just warn him it will take about 4 hours to understand it from a biblical standpoint.
Give you 4 minutes. Write up a response.
I don't think it should take that
long. I don't know. I'm pretty similar vote.
Okay.
Leaning towards no.
Leaning towards no.
Yeah.
I also lean towards no.
What is the question?
Is there free will?
That's the question. Is there free will?
Yeah, let's start off with this.
What do you mean? Is there free will?
Oh my
Dustin.
What do you mean by mean? Are you asking me if I'm asking you a definition of the word free will?
What do you mean by what do you mean?
Could you have done things differently?
Could I have done things differently?
Oh, well, phrasing it like that.
Like,
absolutely.
could I have not moved that mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess from the Bible standpoint, I feel like God is, I may be incorrect, but I thought God gave us all free will. Is that true or false, I guess?
To me, there's the philosophical question. And then there's like, what does the Bible say? To me, that's a little bit easier. But then there's is there a world in which I could have refrained from moving the mouse just now? Mm-hmm. Isn't really the type of thing that the Bible gets that down in the dirty about. So I'm not sure. It sounds like we're just talking philosophically.
Is that what we're talking about?
That's not what the question sounds like to me.
I'm guessing free will in the terms of the Bible, since we're kind of taking a religious slant.
Because then if you're saying, well, can I choose to believe in God and give my life to him? That's a very theological question. That's the Calvinism, Arminian debate. That's where Noah would, turn up his volume.
I think it's kind of a broader question though, because we might agree, you can't choose to believe in God or whatever. You can't choose to fly without an airplane, but
Right.
that doesn't mean we don't have like
Speak for
some
yourself.
kind of like freedom that's like in a
Right, don't you
smaller
have to
domain.
choose to believe in God?
No, I
thought
think
that was-
William's right, because like if it's the theological, like because the most important theological question I imagine to a Christian, perhaps like David, would be like, are we free to choose God? Like, are we free to choose salvation, or is it this predestination situation where I'm just totally depraved? I can't come to God. I can't, he needs to kind of like nudge me to, get my act together and like open my eyes. Like that's the most pressing question, I think, around free will, like theologically. So, but to William's point, you could be a hard Calvinist. There's nothing I can do. God's got to open my eyes. God's got to save me. I don't really have a part of that at all. But yet I could have chosen not to move my mouse. I have free will in that sense. I have free will to be nice to Drew or take the more reasonable route and just totally bully him like he deserves. Like there's that too. So
Wait, what do you mean he deserves it? If there's no free will, I mean, that's this kind of concept, because a lot of times in like a Christian worldview, there's like a kind of judgment that happens from like the God person.
okay,
And so it
From the
seems
God
like there
person.
needs to be, I was going to say character, but
don't panic, but there's a spider right above Kyle's head. It's,
Oh,
it's small.
Kyle's
Is it a
head.
big
It's
one?
small.
Oh.
It is small.
I don't see it.
Does
I got
anybody
it.
have
I don't want anyone
does anybody have a gun or something?
a gun.
Just,
The bug assault.
just
See,
shoot it.
these are the charms that you don't get when you're not here in person.
Shoot
The
it.
live
No one would even
in-person
notice the
spider.
spider above
Somebody-
your head if you're in your own home.
Somebody please shoot and kill the spider.
Just leave it.
Wow.
I guess like, yeah, well, the point I was getting at was like a judgment kind of doesn't make a lot of sense if there's no free will kind of baked into it. So your guys' answers really surprised me. Well, I knew we've talked about this
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
but like it surprised me how, you guys were kind of leaning or on the fence
Bro, that spider moves
about
too
this. I would think it would
fast.
go hard the other way. It's like, yeah, we have free will.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the intuitive, just even philosophically, like, yeah, I mean, it seems we have the free will to choose to move my mouse or not.
Mhm.
So, like, I think in that sense,
you
yes, I have
dropped
that
it.
free
Oh
will.
no.
But there's plenty of stuff we don't, I don't know. It just depends on like what you mean. Like,
No one wants to know if God has free will.
okay, sorry, we're ignoring Noah. Does God have free will? Exactly, will. How can God punish evil if we don't have free will?
See,
I
so
don't know what question to answer.
yeah, those are both pretty beefy questions. I don't know. Well, if God doesn't have free will, who's predetermining his choices? He has to have free will.
So my short answer to Kyle would just be, yeah, I think we have free will with some things, and other things we don't have free will, and some things maybe we have the ability to do, but there's just no real sense in which we would ever do them because just predispositions and circumstances. I think it's just it's messy. I mean, yeah, there's some stuff we're free to do, some stuff we're not.
I'm on board with that. I don't think it's all one or all the other. I think it's a mix.
Really?
Yeah.
Billy? What do you think about what they just said? Like,
Yeah,
Dustin's
Billy.
kind of being
I
like,
don't
yeah,
know.
I do have free
Yeah,
will.
Billy.
I don't know
you
what to
seem
make of
kind
that.
It's your last time here. Make it count.
I would ask like free will to do what? I guess is like that would be. What do you want to do?
Be awesome.
Then you are predestined.
Like, I
to
guess how
not
would
be
you
able to do that.
possibly tell whether you did or not? Yes.
Right, like how do I know if I have the
Yeah,
free
like
will to do
that's-
that?
This is
or-
why I don't find this like a very interesting question.
Same.
Because
Yeah.
like,
And that's just it, because we've talked this into the ground in the 3
It's
years
like-
I've been coming to Torn, and
if you act like people don't, you're gonna be a monster.
yeah, and
But
like
they probably don't.
like
So,
where
it's
I've
like-
come to rest on is exactly there. Like when I talk about Mr. Shaw, it's like we could talk about the philosophy of it all day, but functionally it makes zero difference. You
Yeah.
can't tell the difference in your day-to-day life. You cannot tell. And
Well,
I'll argue
I-
that. I'll argue that. I'll
I'd
defend
say-
that point.
I'd say even further, like even not just in everyday life. Like I don't know if even in principle you could tell.
There's actually, because like in our worldview, like William's got the whole neurological, I mean, just it's hard enough getting around like physicalism resulting in determinism. But like then we have the spiritual realm to deal with. So like even if we could somehow say, well, the physical realm doesn't necessarily determine our actions, like there's like freaking weird stuff like behind the scenes, like pulling strings and pushing and tempting and like drawing near. Like
So even
like
if,
some
even
double
if,
layer
even if
of
physics allows for free will,
potentially
Being
the
a Christian
spiritual
might
world.
get further
Yeah.
excluded.
Yeah. So, I mean, that being said, like, I think we're free to do some things, but yeah, it's like, I don't know, you know, it's like my
I
daughter.
don't-
My
yeah.
daughter thinks she's free to, you know, bring this rock into the home. It's like, no.
So
I have allowed that to happen.
I kind of want to push back on what Noah said. So
Okay.
Noah says, if God has free will and God said he makes man in his image and his likeness, then it's assumed that we're like him. So we should have free will. I'm going to push back on this and say there's a lot of attributes that God has that humans don't have. So even if God does have free will, just because we're quote unquote made in his
Yeah.
image, whatever that means, because we're not physically looking like God, right? Like whatever that means to be in his image doesn't necessarily mean that we have free
What
will.
attributes does he have that we don't have?
Omnipotence.
Okay, but that's, I mean, the idea I think behind, I think, you know, we have
Spaceless.
potence. We don't have omnipotence, but we
Sure.
have potence. We have, you know, we have,
Invisibility.
well, I don't know.
No, I agree.
that's-
I agree with Will on this one. I don't think that's a solid line of reasoning, and I also think that there's lots of scripture that shows that we don't have free will. The most obvious one is in Ephesians 2:10, that pretty much lays it out like, you know, bone dry clear that salvation's in God's hands.
Man, that's not where I turn to. I'm in Romans 8.
Well, you suck.
Wow. Are we like not even brothers in Christ or what? We have different spirits, you and I, man. Spirit of
one.
Well, maybe we'll shoot it to
Holy water
Steve,
out of this.
since I believe Steve thinks we
That's a
have free
false
will.
interpretation of Ephesians.
There's
Okay.
I don't know it off the top of my head. but
Oh, careful, Kyle.
something like that.
I want to hear
Oh.
Steve's thoughts as well.
Yes.
I've got a lot of ideas swimming around, and I guess one on the last topic, made in God's image, at least that's going on in the chat. I think in theological circles, it's known as the imago Dei, right? The image of God. And to the extent that we are not omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, however, we do have the capacity to know things, to have power, and we have the capacity to do good. So to that extent, I guess that's one thing. When I heard Kyle mention the description of the drowning man in the flood, and how that relates to free will, I guess first off, my thought was, well, I think there's will. There's will that human beings have to begin with. How free is it? I guess my thought is not very free, given so much conditioning, and as biological species with brains in which we operate and limbic systems and neocortexes, there's a lot of things that would interfere with our ability to have it be free. Free will has been used as the defense for the problem of evil for the longest time. If you imagine a little girl's capacity to get burned on a stove, how could this be such a good and perfect universe if there's a capacity for a little girl to reach out and burn herself on the stove? There's the ability for the mom or the parent to come in and prevent that from happening. That's second. I guess the last thought I had was, the question seemed to center around what's God's will, what's our will, and what do they have to do with each other, if anything. And the thought I had on that is, okay, if God's will and our will line up in a syllogism, right, if they overlap, in my mind, that is associated with a brain state that could be called the flow state, or getting in the zone. When you lose track of time, when Kyle's playing video games, I don't know, he loses track of time, and yet it's meaningful, productive work that's associated with positive emotion. Like when you're in the zone and you have one of those days where you just feel like you can kind of do no wrong. To that extent, that's the closest thing I can think of to answer the question, there's God's will, there's our will. What does it feel like when they overlap? That's what it feels like. There's this flow state where everything seems to be going in the right direction, associated with positive emotion, stuff like that. So I'll stop.
Is that,
That's very interesting.
I guess, do you believe in God? Is kind of the first question that I should probably start with. Or is this
My answer to that would be the same as Jordan Peterson's, and I don't know if
I literally knew you were gonna say, I don't know how I knew you were going to say that, but as
if
soon as you
bringing
said
up
yes,
Jordan
I was like,
Peterson is the same thing as bringing up Hitler in any kind of philosophical debate, and I apologize, but I'm going to go with his answer. I act as if I do.
okay. So how do you know? You said it kind of sounded like you're saying, well, I know what God's will is when I'm feeling in the zone. Is that accurate? Like that's how you find out what God's will is?
I suppose if there's any thermometer or kind of smell test to whether I'm doing something in this universe that is good and true or beautiful or anything, like the ancient Greeks, good, true, and the beautiful, any sort of activity that I can do that's simultaneously good for me, good for my family, good for my community, thereby good for the flourishing of species, helping people avoid or tolerate, not avoid, but tolerate pain and suffering, making sacrifices for something that I know is productive work that'll happen later. I'm not sure if I'm answering that question right, but how do I know it is when there's a sense of transcendence, like time seems to stop, or there's a timeless moment that Eastern philosophy talks about a lot, being in the moment. And when you're doing that, not just navel gazing, but actually doing something productive and meaningful and valuable, and it brings peace or helps tolerate suffering and things like that. If there's anything transcendent about that, I don't know if I would describe it as transcendent, because it can seem pretty ordinary to me, but when I feel like I'm really in the zone doing something right, I can't judge whether my action is actually evil or not. I don't know that, but that's the best I can do, I think, to answer whether and how I would know if there is such a thing as God's will, if I'm part of it or if I'm in sync with it.
Okay.
I want to push back on what you said a little bit, with a little bit of personal experience. So I have ADHD, and about a year and a half ago, I got started prescribed with Adderall. And I felt that after I started taking Adderall, I was able to reach the flow state that you're kind of describing, or at least what I feel like resonated with me with what you were saying, that it started to be reached a lot easier. So it makes me wonder, is it God's will that I'm taking Adderall? Is this somehow helping God in some way? I don't know. To me, this makes me think this is more of a physical phenomenon than anything else. But yeah, I'm just like curious what you think about that, Steve. Like, don't you think like substances can kind of evoke this?
Unless we're going to talk about psychedelics and ayahuasca and stuff like that, I guess the first thought would be, what we know is that there are brain correlates, like as opposed to the brain causes the mind somehow, or the mind causes the brain. What's active in your brain can be measured, but we can't identify your thoughts. If you have the capacity of discernment to know the difference between what feels like a flow state versus what could be considered a manic state, like I'm the king of the world, nobody can, I'm invincible, that sort of really narcissistic, not necessarily narcissistic, but just my flow of ideas is so rapid that I'm really not connecting with the people around me. I'm out of tune with them kind of state. But if you're describing this sense that by taking the stimulant Adderall, that helps paradoxically tone down the prefrontal cortex that is associated with logic and problem solving and all the executive functioning skills, if that medicine kind of resembles, or if that helps put you in a state where you feel like you can concentrate better, and it's not a mood enhancer, but if your concentration is good, your memory is good, you feel like you're in the zone, then I don't know that that's so much a causation. In fact, I don't know how to answer the question, is because you're right to the mind-body problem.
Let me jump in. So I guess it really, to me, we have sort of swerved a little from the free will part, because the point really isn't like what causes that feeling. The point is it seems like we can take the exact feeling you're describing, Steve, and place it onto someone doing something not useful, not godlike in any sense, just just moving around paper clips and feeling that precise sense that you're talking about, or even map it onto something evil, like you said, Steve. I don't know if I'm doing something evil or not. It just feels transcendent, so that feeling can seemingly go with all different kinds of actions, and so I don't know that it's a great.
It would be a productive part of the discussion, I think, because the first thought I thought you were going to go right to mass shooters. Like, I planned this out, right? I'm in the flow state. I know who I'm going to kill and when, and all that kind of stuff. Is there a way to tell the difference between that? And it's a good topic for the group. If this is the topic of free will or not, do you have the ability to do that? And how do you tell the difference if it's God's will or if it's someone else's?
I think you'd have to know God a little better, just to know his will. That's, to me, would be the answer. That is a long topic.
You're gonna say something?
It's
a fun topic.
It passed.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else do you have for us, Kyle? Sorry for taking you down rabbit holes.
No, that's great. Yeah, so I guess, the second part, which we're kind of getting into. So the first part was kind of like, is there free will? I'm just kind of running, I'm in the zone here. I'm just going with the flow. Obviously, God is pushing me in this direction. More kind of on this flow state, like how do we know something is God's will? Like, how can we be like, that event is God's will? Obviously, we're talking about it a little bit, but what would be a good example, I guess?
If something happens, it was God's will.
That is case one.
How do you tell if something is some person's will?
Yeah,
you could say like natural disasters or something. That would be, people attribute that to be God's will. Like, obviously I don't know if you ever watched those. I just saw on Instagram, there's like a guy who's in like a semi and he crosses the rail, the tracks, and the train just comes through and just demolishes everything. Even his cab gets like cut in half. But the guy just opens the door and he walks out and he's like, oh, look at that. His entire semi is gone. And he somehow survived it in this little thing. So that would, a lot of people say, oh, that was God's will, something, very
God
not
hates
probable.
semis.
Or maybe he just really likes that guy and wanted to wake him up, there's like there's usually a big push behind it, and it seems like we were kind of going with maybe like a compromise between free will and no free will. There's a mix of free will. So, if we do have free will in some spots, what spots do we not have free will? I guess just to clarify that, if anybody's got anything to say.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how you would tell, even for a person, if something was their will happening.
Like if they ordered it or something, if they're a person in power and they say do this thing.
We don't have Jim here, but I know he would bring up his case where he prayed the God, he didn't have money or something, and he prayed the God and he got like the exact amount that he needed.
Yeah.
And then didn't he like give that away and then it happened again or something? I thought there was a
Something
second
like
part to that. So
well, you got a strong reaction to that. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
it's just whenever I hear that story, I just kind of cringe a little bit because you don't take into the account all of the possible ways that situation could have happened.
Yeah.
Lots of people knew the story about the girl from his church who needed the money. Lots of people were probably receiving paychecks. Any one of them could have had the exact number. It's just a very privileged perspective that he has that makes him think, oh, this is special. Like, you know, anybody that could win the lottery, right? Like, it's just, it doesn't make it a miracle that someone does win the lottery. And especially when you're looking for patterns, you can find them because we're pattern seeking creatures. I don't know. It's just, it makes me cringe.
It's not necessarily a pattern. Like pattern, I'd say people would usually agree that to be science or something. But like if it's like, you know, I need, you know, my rent is like $480, I think now. So if I need exactly, you know, maybe I don't even need the full amount. Maybe I need $210.50. And if somebody like, here's $210.50, it's like, wow, that's kind of weird. Why would anybody give you 50 cents, you know, like.
If I recall the story correctly, it was Jim was due that money. He did some work and they were like not paying him over a certain amount of time. And it was like some back and forth. And eventually he got paid and that was his paycheck. To me, that's not surprising. It was kind of predetermined based on the amount they agreed upon, the amount of time that he worked. And it was a coincidence that somebody else needed that exact amount of money. You know, I guess I can't say for sure it was a coincidence. It seems more likely to be a coincidence than God wanted him to spend the money on that. And it was like, I'm going to give you the exact amount. So
I thought it was a donation or somebody gave it to him like through charity or something. I don't know, but I could be wrong. That's
I think
just one story.
You could point to, you know, other countries with like free healthcare and be like, that's God's will happening there. Everyone's getting healthcare for free, you know, I don't know. But we will be going into that in the second half. Yeah. No, it'll be on topic in just a bit, but yeah, I'm still looking for like events, events that are God's will that seem like it's God's will more than like humans doing them.
Do you guys think there's a meaningful distinction between God's will and God like just not preventing something from happening?
God's will.
Is there a meaningful distinction between God's will and God
not preventing something?
I think it depends, on what you mean by will. So like, I think what does Steve say? This is a cop out before we start imagining we can tell if an event is us. We should try to figure out if it is.
You can read it out loud. This is a cop out because I'm probably just going to take the audio for this. So this is a cop. So Steve says this is a cop out, but before we can start imagining, we can tell if an event is God's will. We should try to figure out if we as agents can figure out why we do things.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to read that out loud. I was just kind of.
You can interrupt anytime. Just say, hey, I want to say something, and we'll stop or we'll keep going or whatever.
Well, it just occurred to me, like, why did everybody come to this meeting? And there's the, imagine a 2-year-old, why is the sky blue? Well, the sky is blue because the refraction of light. And well, why? Well, because there's light that comes from the sun, and they keep asking the why question over and over again. And if we do that for ourselves, I don't know where you end up. Like, why did you come to this meeting tonight? I had nothing better to do. Okay, well, what would have been better to do? Nothing, but you decided to come to this meeting. Okay, well, no, why did you come to this meeting? Because I had something to say. Why did you think it would be something you would want to say? And you keep drilling with that question, why, over and over again. And maybe you can ground it in something religious, maybe not, I don't know, but as we're trying to imagine, okay, was a natural disaster God's will, and trying to figure those things out, I don't know that we're in a position to say that we really know why we do things. And so it's a good thought experiment to kind of, if we're going to imagine what God's will is, let's figure out our own first. That's all I really was trying to contribute.
Well, we figured out our own in the first part of the question.
Drew, to go back to your question. So if something is not prevented, is that God's will? I would say at the very least, it was not God's will to prevent it. So like if Abraham kills his son, say, and that just happens, then I could say, okay, it was not God's will to prevent that from happening, because if God wanted to prevent Abraham from killing his son, he would have done it. So I get, in a way, like maybe, you know, God's not necessarily signing off on it, but he's not vetoing it either.
I think of it as, I mean, and I haven't thought much about all these questions, so this could all be garbage. But I mean, I think we know, like, so God's kind of the guy who's all knowing, all powerful. So in a sense, nothing can happen without his allowing it. So that seems weird when you're talking about like nasty stuff. So like, I guess to me, there's a difference between what did God allow, which is seems to me everything, and what is his heart. You know, I don't think, you know,
That's
murder.
probably a better question. What is God's part in like our lives, I guess?
What is his heart?
What is the heart? Okay.
So yeah, so like obviously if I go and murder Kyle, God allowed that. He saw it, he didn't stop it, so he allowed it. Which to me, I don't know if that's much different than like having some share of responsibility. But was it God's heart that those types of things happen? You know, then you'd have to just know more about what God is like.
That brings up a whole can of worms, man. Like if you like if you're walking by and you see somebody getting mugged, you know, assaulted or something like that, it's not your will that happens. But I think if you don't do anything, you take a share of the responsibility at that point.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Right.
So
then how can we put the responsibility up for that on God?
We need to subpoena God.
The subpoena God.
Hold him accountable. In a court of law.
I think part of the argument is that there's usually, when you do like a mix kind of God's will and like human will in the same universe, usually there's like, people would say, at least when I talk to religious folk on campus, it's there's a large plan in place, you know, so like, especially for like miracles, right? Like Jesus coming back, that had to be part of God's plan. That's not, Jesus didn't free will himself to come back to life, right? Like, maybe he did, but you know, we'll just say for the sake of argument that is true, and then that is part of God's plan, right? We'll just accept that. And then I don't know if there's anything else, if anybody else would say there's anything else that is like that significant. Steve put something else.
Yeah, he did.
He did sue God.
I did hear about
I
sounds like some bad. So
I'd say the responsibility thing is adding an equally complicated question on top of the will question, and should come after. You have some idea of that?
I don't understand.
Like responsibility for something kind of depends on your answer to the will question in the first place.
Okay.
Oh, so maybe God doesn't have that will.
So like, I guess, I don't know if this is helpful or if it's backtracking to what we were talking about earlier, but like, I mean, and analogies are just analogies. It's like, I'm not saying this is theologically deep or anything, but it just pulls at, okay, maybe this makes a little bit of sense. Like my daughter, like if like I let that chick get hurt sometimes, like I fully let her just walk into a wall, or I mean, I probably haven't done that, but you know, like whatever, like I'm trying to think. I don't know if she's gonna
walk on the interstate.
No, not walk on the interstate. But
I saw my daughter get mugged and I didn't do
Yeah.
anything.
It was God's will.
but okay, like her ice cream, like she's gonna, you know, I told her, hey, make sure you hold your ice cream like this. You know, I tell her again, I'm not gonna tell you again, like this last time I'm gonna tell you, hold your ice cream like this. She doesn't hold it like that, and I'm like, I know that ice cream's gonna fall, and then it falls, and she cries. And is that my heart for her to be sad and not have the things she wants? Like, no, that sucks. Like, I love that girl. I don't want her to I want her to always have the stuff that she wants.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I found it better to allow it to happen. You know, I would never like knock an ice cream out of her mouth, but I allowed it to happen. So that's just something I couldn't.
No ice cream for you.
So I mean,
How you respond
yeah, go ahead.
How you respond to a child who's fallen down and gotten hurt. If you make a huge deal out of it, oh, you poor baby, are you all right? It must hurt terribly. you're going to raise a frightened, incapacitated, anxious child. Whereas if you say, well, get up, or my favorite example, I was at the races at an Eagle Raceway, and I overheard this. There's this little boy, like 3 years old, in the men's room. And in the stall next to him was his dad helping another one. And the little boy yells out, "Daddy, there's pee all over the toilet." And the dad's response was, "Well, don't put any more on it." And I thought, there's a great answer, right? Because what would anybody, oh, you poor, I know, urine, ew. You know what I mean? That was a good example of parenting. And there's a reason why there's a good balance that you have with children. And if, I don't know if that applies to God's will and we're God's children, is this the right learning environment for that to happen, is a fair question to kind of explain why bad things happen. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool perspective.
I want to kind of parse this conversation a little bit, because we're talking about different situations, like the example with your kid with the ice cream. That's like one thing, and then there's like free will, agents working on each other, and like, why doesn't God interfere with that? That's kind of like another thing. But I think if we like focus on like natural disasters, I feel like that's like the least defensible piece of it.
Mhm.
Like, why do forest fires burn, countless animal life, cause, immense amount of suffering? What is the learning aptitude for this? Or what is the kind of reason to like, oh, well,
You
whatever.
learn the gender of your baby.
Yeah, with the forest fire.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, of course, the analogy breaks down, because it's like, well,
inside joke.
yeah, God doesn't just let his kids like ice cream fall, like he'll let them just burn in a forest fire by themselves in misery and agony. So the analogy doesn't quite.
Well, it could be God
Go that
trying to
far.
teach us as all humanity a lesson, like that we should take better care of the forest, or we shouldn't
Yeah.
be living in the forest.
That's the perspective.
Earthquakes, you can get as trivial meteors. Like what could the lesson be
Right.
for meteors?
That we
Right.
should direct them away from Earth, and we should invest in the science, obviously.
Okay,
Swag.
yep. God gave us meteors to tell us to invest in science. That's a God I can get behind.
Wake up.
Big God people.
I think, I don't know, I haven't really thought about this very much, but I think maybe God might let stuff like that happen to kind of, well, I mean, if you go back to Genesis, I think it's in Genesis, he gives control of the world over to Satan. And I think, stuff like that is it's the byproduct of being fallen. You're going to have death and destruction everywhere. At least at all. I think that's, I haven't thought about it much at all, but that's my initial reaction to that question. I haven't thought about it much.
Right. Theologically, like the world is not as God set it up, wants it, everything's effed, like big time.
Well, that was
And
part of
that's-
God's plan.
Well, it was, God is omnipotent, so everything is allowed by God, but we are the ones who screwed it up. And so you say, well, why do we, have forest fires? It's like ultimately because we wanted that. That's the way we wanted the world. So we get to enjoy our spilled ice cream.
I won't say the E word, but this is where the E word kind of gets into our differences in the way that we think about things. Because did we fall, or did we just kind of arise from the world?
Oh, evolution.
Yeah.
I'm like, what E word?
What is the
Where are we going? I'm like,
Declares.
I thought it was going to be evil.
Evolution. But did we really have some fall from grace, or did we just kind of?
But yeah, no, not if evolution is true, then
Right.
the Bible's.
I mean, and so like that's when we have conversations and you're like, well, I could still be a Christian if I,
Right.
believe in evolution. This is what I'm saying, where like
Right.
this pokes like some pretty big holes in like
Right.
some theological ideas, like
Yeah. Yeah,
but we can
you are
talk about some of
right.
that. That's why I come, so everyone can tell me how right I am about everything.
You have anything to add, Steve? Otherwise, we'll go on to our case
That
study.
scared Noah off pretty dang
I guess
quick.
just the Christian story is centered around a perfectly innocent being who was tortured to death and still had gratitude and still struggled on the cross, right? And if there's a lesson from Christianity in how to act in a world that is so effed up, as you said, it's to pick up your damn cross and bear it, bear your suffering nobly, and sure as shit, don't make things worse. Sorry, as this goes out on the internet. No.
This is a kids program, Steve.
Don't make it worse.
You don't know how old David is.
He's 10 years old.
I send this to middle schools around the country.
Anyone who can get anything out of this can handle hearing that.
Speak for yourself.
Well, at the end of the day, only one other thought, and that was, as difficult it is to learn to do something, whether it's to learn how to ride a bike or drive a car or go to school or have a career and try to maintain a family and juggle to all that to pay bills. At the end of the day, with all that suffering that we endure, was it worth it? So if I imagine, okay, if God knew all this was all foreordained and all this, and it was all going to go to hell, so to speak, he knew that from beginning to end in a chapter, okay, must have decided it was worthwhile. And I can match with that understanding in the end, based on the family I've tried to put together and the life I've tried to lead. The only thing I've ever learned was by great struggle. So in the end, I'm glad I went through all the struggle and it was worth it to get to the point where I am now. So I don't know. That's
kind of back on you a little bit more. So if you're right, and the whole point of this is, is this whole process worth it? It makes me think, well, the Christian answer must be no. Otherwise, what would be the point of like heaven or an afterlife? Like, what's the point of a promise of something more if this is enough,
I mean, I don't even like really think about heaven that much when I think about like, is God really like benefiting me? That's not really even something that enters the equation for me.
Interesting.
I was actually weirded out by how little I think of heaven as a Christian. Sometimes I feel like I'm like, should I be like?
I don't know. It's just not something. It's not something that really. I don't know. It's like I'd rather just focus on how I can live this life in a way that's pleasing God.
I just think it's a promise that doesn't make sense to me if just this life is enough. If this life is just enough and our connections and our relationships are what makes it worthwhile, which is what I believe, as an atheist, it seems kind of extraneous to then be like, and also there's an afterlife where you get to be forever and all the things that you don't like about this are gone.
They're not two different things, this life and the heaven. It's all like, it's all one thing. I mean, heaven is going to be kind of like this, just we're going to look a little sexier and my back's not going to hurt, but I mean it's going to be still like in this world.
Really, because if you lust after someone in your heart, that's just as bad as adulting with them in your heart, or what's the line, something like that? If you lust after somebody in your heart, it says
I don't understand what
I don't understand the connection.
Everyone's looking sexy, there's going to be a lot of lust
okay. I was like, what?
It was a little bit of a joke. Yeah, sorry.
Everybody's going to be ugly.
I'm objectively.
Yeah, everyone in heaven has to be ugly, so there's no lust. Right?
Even more sarcastic too.
Man.
I think that's what the Amish are going for.
Anyway.
Where are these roads?
Well, to be back on the point,
yes,
I don't know if anybody watched our debate, but we had Steve and William and Jim and myself on a debate. And Steve's question was, is there such a thing as spiritual development? And so I think that kind of plays into this, as in that's why God thinks the suffering may be worth it to like elevate our consciousness to like some new level. Maybe. Was anybody think about that?
Wait.
We have suffering because it's kind of like the kid who has to learn from mistakes. You have to go through these mistakes to achieve something more.
Okay.
God's farming souls.
So like, if everything was perfect, we wouldn't actually like learn anything,
Dustin.
I think and again, this is just right off the cuff of my darn
Off
brain.
the dome.
Off the dome. Totally off the dome.
Go for it.
But I feel like that's a dumb way to start. No, I don't feel like. I think that God makes use of suffering. Like, I think if you had all his druthers, you know, we'd learn our lessons sans suffering. But given the fact that we've made certain choices and there are certain, you know, spiritual elements at play trying to muck things up, God's like, well, check this out. I will make good of that nasty stuff. But I'm sure.
My mom calls that learning a lesson in the classroom versus learning it on the field trip. She says it's much easier to learn something in the classroom, but the lessons on the field trip stick with you way longer.
I'm a John Batista hitting us with that wisdom. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll revisit. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, we're built for experience. That's for sure. You learn a lot more by going out and actually doing something as opposed to thinking about it. It's not until you speak words too. Well, William, okay, I'm going to push back on you now.
Do it.
Yes!
Oh, referencing Will to himself.
Sorry, that wasn't nice, but I know you can take it.
Do it.
It reminded me what you talked about in our debate. You referenced you referenced Kohlberg's moral development stages. And so if you imagine, I guess, roughly 3 stages. So why don't you speed? You know, when you're driving your car, why don't you speed? Well, the first stage of moral development would be because I'll get in trouble, because I'll get a ticket, because there's a rule against it or something like that. The second stage would be, well, I don't want somebody else to hit me, and so I don't want to do that either. So still sort of still a selfish kind of reason. And at the end of the day, the reason you don't speed is that you want to preserve the health, welfare, and safety of other people. And that's why you don't speed. So as I think about, you're mentioning, we have a rule in Judaism about adultery. And then in the New Testament, we have, well, it's not just don't break the rules because there's going to be trouble for you. Think about it in a deeper way, right? Looking upon someone else, coveting someone else with desires that way. That's my pushback, I guess, that I can think. You just referenced there's a reason you knew that having lust in your heart was qualitatively different than having an affair or an adulterous relationship behaviorally.
Steve, you need to come more often.
Yeah, man. Some good stuff.
What?
Yeah, well,
Does
I
this
guess
have to do with Will?
Well, going back to what Steve was
Answering
saying
questions.
about like
Listening to him talk.
spiritual development, the kind of my pushback to him originally on his point of spiritual development was, well, there are psychological models about psychological development. There's physical development. There's sociological development. There are lots of development that we can look at empirically and observe that is clearly like of the world. It's natural. And anytime from my point of view, we point to something and say, this is what spiritual development is. I think, well, actually, we could probably put it into a different category, like psychological development, moral development, sociological development, and so forth.
Because you believe we don't have spirits.
Exactly.
And your spirit is not very developed.
William's roasted
roasted
tonight. What the heck? Come on, man. Just because he's wearing sunglasses.
It's too cool. You gotta take him down.
Yeah, it must be. People think he's too cool. We gotta bring him down a
We're
little.
all subconsciously.
Humanizing me because you can't see my face.
All right.
What else you got?
We'll end
30
it.
minutes.
We'll end it on this one. That is going to be it might be a little bit hot, but we'll see. But this is the main reason that my friend was bringing this up. What was
7:30?
7:34? Yeah. So yeah, what he was wondering was that there was a case in Ohio of the 10-year-old rape victim forced to travel to Ohio or Indiana for abortion. And so, of course, his main question about this, well, if there is a God's will, a God's plan,
Yeah.
how did this, happen? Of course, how did they get raped? And then all of a sudden we're not doing abortion. Should we be allowing abortion? All those questions kind of get wrapped up in this thing. I don't know.
Why did she have to conceive, for instance,
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that one. Yeah. But yeah, that's the big question, I guess.
You just said multiple questions.
You guys want me to read
Explain that? Why don't you, Christians? Why do bad things happen?
Why do bad things happen?
That's what we've been talking about for like 3/4 of the time here.
Yeah.
We skipped over
but
the question of like whether or not there even is will in the first place.
We touched on everything.
Yeah, and like everyone was like, probably not, and then the entire thing's been assuming there was. So that's why I've not been saying anything. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure there isn't, and everything's been assuming there is.
I'm also in the same camp, so I'm putting my best on to make a
all
case
these problems
for
go
this.
away real fast if there's not will.
But for fun's sake, we're assuming.
That's kind of my position most of the time when I hear I'm like, you guys got all these theological problems. It goes away real quick. You just take one piece of it out.
I don't even like buy into free will mostly. I'm like, I think we're all in agreement here.
Oh yeah, I get what I was. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if that's what you were saying.
I was talking
That's
about
not
God more broadly.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't, not that. I believe that.
Not that. We disagree on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we agree a lot on the free will stuff.
Yeah, mostly. I think.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna have an explanation for the
How about abortion?
10-year-old rape it.
Yeah, that's a totally different.
I think God wants it. I think
That
he's
could
not
be
only he wants every fetus to be aborted. That's my opinion.
You couldn't even hardly say that, man.
Well,
Like
the idea,
that.
so like along with the boat idea, right? If she got pregnant, this would be like one of those options to maybe like live her life differently that God has allowed. It's possible, but why do we allow it or not allow it based on, if it's God's will to not have abortions, we just shouldn't have them, right? That would be God's plan right there.
In my perspective, I do think there should be exceptions for things like rape and incest. I think there should be exceptions for things like that. If the life of the mother's in danger.
Do you think that's like politically like viable?
That shit's up to the states at this point.
I mean, like, so if you're a doctor and you think there's a chance it's never certain, you never know, like this woman's going to die or whatever.
Yeah.
There's an ectopic pregnancy, something like that.
Yeah.
There's 70% maybe chance that this woman might die or risk her life. Like, don't you think like having the extra steps of like, you need to validate like why this person needs to have this procedure. And like, don't you think that'll stop people, even people who maybe meet those exception requirements from getting the abortion?
Not in an ideal situation. I think you could like definitely set up procedures for that. I mean, we've got some pretty smart people in this country. So I think
debatable.
Some, I think most people would agree there's some.
I'm
who they are is the question.
I'm like mostly optimistic. I don't know, but no, I think you could do that. I definitely think it's viable for sure. I'm not a fan of people just like getting abortions for kids they don't really want at that time in their life. If they say like, oh, it's going to hurt my career, it's like, I'm not a fan of that. I think a human life is worth, way more than that, but especially for something you chose to do. But for things like rape and incest, absolutely, I think there should be.
Well, I guess another point in the political viability, how do you tell the difference between somebody who's been raped and just somebody who wants to get an abortion and will say that they've been raped?
Yeah, I mean,
More importantly, how do you tell the difference between a baby that's the product of rape and a baby that's not the product of rape?
Or how do you tell the difference between a miscarriage and an illegal abortion? Because I mean, if abortion is illegal and we need to like prosecute the people who do these things,
well, there
needs to be investigations.
That's a whole different thing. I am totally against prosecuting it. I think that shit's wildly out of line. I'm super against that. Like if this state starts prosecuting women for like getting abortions and like traveling out of state, I will protest that in the street, man. I'm against that, especially barring people from traveling out of state. I think that shit is like authoritarian.
Interesting.
Horrible. I think that's just a terrifying idea.
because putting on my Christian hat, back when I was pro-life,
Yeah.
I was basically just thinking like it's a person. So if you murder them, you know, you should be tried for murder. But I mean,
maybe we
obviously
can
that's
move
not
away
my
from the
position.
law and just say if it's morally correct
that's a
or
different thing.
bad.
Yeah, I'm talking about like my political me.
Yeah,
mostly
yeah.
right now.
Political, politics gets a little bit more, weedy.
Yeah.
But we should at least be able to come to like the moral, kind of a moral understanding of this stuff, right?
I think
It's easier for me to argue
that
politics than
abortion
morals.
is okay in pretty much any circumstance because the bodily autonomy of the mother.
Okay, so I hear that,
Uh-huh.
and I guess I just want to explore that more. Cause like, so what do you think? I don't know, man. Like, do you think that a human life isn't being, ended there?
I think even if a human life is being ended, that doesn't justify taking away the bodily autonomy of the mother.
Okay, so what makes her bodily autonomy more valuable than the other human life, though?
Right. Okay. So if we're saying that the pregnant person has like a fetus and that fetus is a person, there are two people in that situation.
Yeah.
Their rights are in conflict with one another.
Yeah.
So how do we determine which person to side with? Well, one person needs the other person and needs their bodily resources to survive. The other person doesn't.
Okay.
So if I needed a blood donation to survive and Kyle is a valid blood donor and he won't give it to me, we won't force him to do that because he has bodily autonomy. It wouldn't make a difference if I was inside Kyle, like just because I happen to be physically, in his uterus, doesn't make a difference. I need a blood transfusion, therefore you have to be forced to give it to me legally. That's kind of the point that I'm making. The fetus needs the body of the mother, and the mother is not obligated.
Do we want to go off in the abortion weeds here? Are we cool with that, or do we want to get back?
I'm totally cool with it. I push it in this direction.
Tangent on a tangent.
I know you're upset about it.
Well, he had this like written down as a planned topic. When he threw it out there, I was like, okay, we're just gonna end with abortion. Okay. Well, so what do you think? Because I want to make sure what you're saying is what the hill you're really dying on. So if the mother is at 7.5 months or whatever, so you're kind of saying, well, the baby in the womb needs the mother, so that's why it's okay to take the life. So if they're at a point where they're viable, and we could just say, well, gosh, all right, mom, you don't want this baby in you any longer. You don't want this baby. I guess we'll just take it out and keep it alive instead of, are you against then moms at that point? You can't abort, but it's your autonomy, so we'll take it out and just keep it alive by other means. Is that where you're at?
An interesting point about third trimester abortions, they make up, I think it's less than 3%. It's incredibly tiny. And usually the reason people have abortions in the third trimester is because of their health. And they need to have it. Most people don't get to the third trimester and then think, oh, well, I'm going to get an abortion. Like, you take care of it before you get to that point, unless you're planning to have the child. So I don't know why anybody would, wait 7 months and then walk into Planned Parenthood. It seems a bit absurd.
They didn't know. I mean, there's plenty of people that don't even know they're pregnant. I don't even know that I'm pregnant. I don't want this baby. Like, I don't just get it out of me. Like, I don't want to have like a child. I need you to abort it. Like,
so it's viable, and she's wanting to do the abortion. Yes. Yeah, I think, in those cases, with the edge cases, this is a tricky topic, and, politically, we can't have our ideal world. We have to make, some policy choices. I kind of lean more towards, the trimester standard where, states can regulate the third trimester, ban it entirely in the third trimester. I think that is kind of a moderate decision, and it makes sense, while still upholding the mother's right in the first trimester and somewhat in the second trimester. I don't know. It's tough. And I think that, nobody's really going to be going into those cases, like trying to get an abortion just like as their first like method of birth control or what have you. But like at the end of the day, if it's viable, if it's autonomous on its own, then yeah, I guess I would be against it. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
That wasn't very clear.
No, you were clear there at the end, and that's what I was wondering, because you have, that's not common, but you have things like, oh, this kid was born like, insanely premature at like, 8 weeks or something, but we can keep him alive on ventilators and incubators and whatever else. And he's not relying on his mom at that, or she, whatever, is not relying on their mom at that point, but the kid's still viable.
So then to me that actually almost like, I'm sorry if I interrupted them.
No, I was done.
Because it actually like makes the autonomy argument that they should have their autonomy no matter what. Actually, this case to me makes it seem even more awful, like not a good argument. That because what would we think of mothers that would do that at 7.5 months? You know what? I don't want this baby. Just take it out of me and just good luck to it. It's clear like that's not right as a mom. Like that's your child. This is not some unnatural state that
I guess what do you say? Are you saying getting an abortion at 7 months, or what are you saying? So
in this case where we are able to, the mom finds out she's pregnant at 7 months, whatever, she does not want the baby, but in you're saying like if you were, President Biden or whatever your supreme dictator Biden with all powers, I would do nothing. You're going to say, all right, well, since it's my rules, William's rules, you are going to have this baby taken out of you. We're not going to kill the baby because that would be wrong, but you have autonomy, so it would be right to allow you to be gone with the baby, but we're going to keep the baby alive. I guess what I'm just saying is that to me makes the autonomy argument seem even worse, because it makes it even more clear that that's a terrible choice for the mom, even when she's not even, taking the life of the child. We can all just look at that and go, yeah, that's a terrible move. Like, you don't do that. Like, you don't just get rid of your child because off to the world with you. I have my own bodily choice.
I think it doesn't, I don't know. I think I see like less wrong with it the further back in the pregnancy we go. Like most pregnancies don't even go to term. Your body just naturally aborts it. We don't look at that and go, oh, a travesty, this is terrible. Like, it's just like a natural thing that happens. So I think, in those edge cases, we have that visceral response and we feel like, this is wrong and we have to like preserve this life. But I don't think that necessarily applies throughout, the entire pregnancy. It's a long journey. It's a very different thing that you end with than what you start with.
How so? What do you mean?
Look at them.
I don't understand.
Look at a baby. Look at a zygote. They're different things.
I don't think they are.
Like categorically?
Qualitatively, yeah.
What do you mean you don't think? Okay, one of them has eyes. That's a qualitative difference between a zygote and a baby.
I mean, like, in its essence, like what it is.
I don't know.
The definition of what
it has a soul.
I think it's a human life the whole time. I don't think how developed it is makes a difference.
Does it have a soul the entire time?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have my.
So would you think like the natural like abortion
would
happen most of the time?
I
like
believe
those
it's a
are
valuable
I'm
human
ignorant
life.
about that.
Okay.
Please inform me.
Yeah, I guess I would have to
Scientifically, it's a
give you
human
like
life, and I value humans.
scientific citation. But like a lot of the times when you get pregnant, your body, women's bodies, don't always keep it. Like
you're talking about miscarriages. Is that different?
I mean,
thing?
even
I'm stupid about
like
this.
the egg doesn't implant into the uterine line. Like it just doesn't kick off.
Yeah.
Like you can fertilize an egg and then it just gets wasted. Like it happens a lot. And I don't think that's a travesty. I don't compare that to like the forest fires. Like I don't think they're even on the same plane.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Well, geez, now that's a tricky one, Dustin. Do you think that as soon as an egg is fertilized, that's a human life in that case?
Scientifically, it's a human life. So
okay, so then when that happens, like,
are you asking, do I value that human life?
Yeah, if it never even like attached to the uterine wall, I mean, you wouldn't even know.
I don't know why being attached to the uterine wall would make it any like less.
I mean, I don't know anything about this. I'm pretty stupid. So.
Yeah, it's. I don't know what to say. It's a human life. It's it's a new human life.
I'll have to read more about that on anything.
So it's, you know, it's the same thing with like birth control pills and things like that. They don't, a lot of times they allow the egg to fertilize, but not attach to the wall. And so you have, you know, lots and lots of people say, like, that was something I didn't realize until like a couple of years ago, that like birth control pills, like, don't always stop life from being created. It stops it from finding a, you know, a livable,
becoming a parasite is what you're looking for.
yeah, they're parasites. These fetuses are just these parasites.
I love that perspective.
Parasitic.
So empathetic.
Yeah, I value human life from.
Yeah, I just think like an abortion pill and a 7th-month abortion, those have very different feelings to me.
Of course, the feelings are different. That's not what we're talking about.
I would also say like just like the moral like weight of it is just different. Like,
what are you basing that on?
It's a good question. That is a good question. I don't know. I'll have to. You said you looked like you were going to say something.
You're getting out of this.
Yeah.
He scratched his nose.
I guess I could point to like capability of perceiving pain. That'd be a good.
A lot of people
physical, naturalistic.
A lot of people use consciousness at like the third term is when they think consciousness is more, like feeling pain, have a spinal cord, being able to experience things. I'll shoot it to Steve here, who hasn't been saying anything for a while. If you want to say something, you don't have to.
If I thought I had any wisdom on this one, I would pass it along. There's two things two big things I don't know, and that is, what would it be like to be in a position of rape, incest, having your job turned upside down? I know that, the reason does make a difference. If the baby has a disfiguring, awful, painful disability, if we know the condition of the birth defects are going to be such like this, and I don't have the ability to imagine what that would be like. And, the trump card that women maybe fairly make in any conversation about this is, you don't get a say because you're not in that position, nor will you ever be. And okay, fair enough.
You can define yourself as self-define yourself as a woman. So
I don't know what it would be like to look at my child whose father is my own biological father, as a result of incest, what it would be like to love and care for a child and have some traumatic experience just continue that way, or imagining it. I can't think of that, but I can also look at what I've seen in terms of descriptions of the procedure for abortion. And as gruesome as that is, I don't think we need to shy away from it. I mean, this is going to sound really crass, but I could kill a cow. I could kill a pig to eat. I could kill a chicken, shrimp, fish, anything I put into my body that I eat. I think I can fairly say that I would be able to kill a creature like that. That makes me a carnivore, or at least an omnivore. But the process that's involved, and I think that's why there's a lot of religious groups that want people to see what is happening during that procedure. And if you imagine a third trimester and what that is, I don't think we should shy away from either one of those questions. What it's like to be in the position of having that decision goes for William's bodily autonomy, and it's woman's right to choose. But at the same time, if you look at the actual act, that just doesn't make it straightforward bodily autonomy, and I can rationalize my way out of I just prefer bodily autonomy over a clump of cells kind of thing. I don't know. I don't have anything to I don't know where I come down on this. It's just really hard.
I guess like from a more practical standpoint, either this is a decision that is left to a woman and her doctor, or it's a decision that's left to somebody else. And I would rather it not be the somebody else. Like, I don't want politicians to be in charge of making medical decisions, deciding what kind of medical operations you can have. You know, I want as little government interference in like medical choices, personal choices, like as possible. Yeah. Because even if we have exceptions to the rule, that means somebody other than the mother and her doctor is making that choice. So who amongst us, you know?
God, obviously.
Yeah.
See, and that's too easy. That's too easy for me too. When I imagine what they're doing with leaving live births on the table, on a failed abortion, and things like that. There's bodily autonomy decision between the mother and her doctor, who's allowing an infant on a table from a failed abortion to not get any medical care. That's not between a mother and her so-called doctor to me. I can't go there.
Call me crazy, but I'm with you there too, brother.
Who's to intervene? You know, who makes the rule about, you know, who gets an abortion and who doesn't? Who makes the decision? It's not the woman and it's not her doctor. So what, politicians?
Right.
Yeah, it'd have to be government.
Medical board? Like, who? I mean, like.
It's the states now.
Yeah.
It's the states now. It was you can't make a decision like that at all, and now it's to the states. So it was that.
That only guarantees that somebody's got the wrong answer.
So you're leaving out something that you already said is part of the equation, though, which is that there's another life in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the mom and the doctor.
Well, they can't make the decision.
Well, the kid can fight for their life.
I don't think the fetus has much input.
That's why the state comes in, because the fetus doesn't have the input.
Mm-hmm.
But you can understand the controversy, William, why people would believe this is a human life and it's murder.
Right. I guess I'm just more talking to the people whose position it is that there should be some exceptions for abortion. If you think there should be some exceptions, then you must think that somebody other than the woman and her doctor makes the decision about what those exceptions are.
Yes,
that's
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Pointing out.
I know that sounds like a real like authoritarian, you know, thing to say.
Going against your own vibe, man. You're supposed to be.
Well, that's where my morals come in. You know, I think if I didn't have any, like, you know, if I wasn't a Christian, I would probably be like mostly like really libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that comes into it. But yeah, it's I mean, that's like a common thing you hear in the pro-life movement, is that, you know, we're a voice for the voiceless, that sort of thing. It's like, of course this kid can't do anything to defend itself. That's why we have rules for stuff like that, man.
What was authority for? It's protecting innocent people,
dominating them,
abusing
them.
Well,
throwing them in jail.
what is it like? What is it used for properly?
Yeah.
Because like obviously, yes, it is.
Yeah, sorry, I was
which is why
which
is why there's lots of libertarians and anarchists and stuff. But it's like obviously that stuff doesn't work super well because.
Do we really protect children very much in this country?
That's a whole different can of worms, Will.
Well, yeah, like child abuse and stuff, right?
I was just thinking like healthcare, school shootings.
Well, I mean, those are things that we want to try to solve, right? That'd be
the
same thing like abortion, right?
We're trying to solve. Actively working to prevent.
We're trying to fix these.
Just because they happen doesn't mean we're all like.
It's very convenient that we start protecting the children by taking away women's already established rights. You know, like that seems a weird place to begin if really the truth of it was protecting children. You know, there's lots of things.
Who says we're starting there? That's a load of horse dung, dude.
Yeah. I guess fair enough. Yeah, you're not. We're not beginning history right now, but I mean, you know, there's lots of things we could do to help children. You know, abortion just seems to be a very
well, it's
interesting one to focus on.
Okay, well, I think there's a pretty clear distinction. Like, it's not actively trying to help all the children. It's more like, let's just not have people kill them. Like, so like, you know, the like the healthcare stuff, at least, that's you going out of your way to specifically add positive things for them. Like the school shooting thing, I think, is more analogous, where it's like, okay, we need to prevent them from just being killed.
I would argue that it's not a giving somebody something to give them healthcare. I mean, it's just like giving them a right that, you know.
It absolutely is.
Not really. We're the only country in the world that determines your healthcare based on your wallet.
I highly doubt that is true.
The only more developed country.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look at Europe. Look at,
but like,
you know,
if like
Japan, China.
Like, it is a good thing to do that, but it is not necessarily like a like outright bad thing to not do that. I don't think. Like, we should, but I don't think it is like that. That's a different thing.
You don't think it's a bad thing to deprive children from healthcare?
Deprive them is like taking positive action to prevent them.
Yeah, like not just passing bills that give healthcare access to like everybody, for example.
That is very different. That is not giving it to them outright. Whereas like what I'm saying is like preventing someone from going specifically, not good.
Okay.
Like,
I mean,
there's
I
a
hear what you're
difference
saying.
between like stopping someone from getting something they want or need and just not helping them get it. That's it's like
there's a difference between stopping somebody getting mugged and just watching them get mugged and
there's a difference between letting someone get mugged, helping stop it, or mugging the person.
Them yourself.
Yeah, I'm like, that one is clearly very bad. You should probably help them. But
and also this whole thing is pretty fallacious, because just because we're not doing other things we should be doesn't make abortion any more right or wrong.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, I just don't think it's really all about the kids.
I mean, if you want to talk about like the nature of the pro-life movement or the motives of politicians in America or the state of how we view things like that in America, that's a whole different thing. And I'll talk about that with you. We're talking about abortion and when it is moral and immoral. And that has nothing to do with how well we're doing these other things that we may or may not, or that we should.
I was just talking about like, why do we make the policy decisions that we do? Like, why is
so you're talking about the politics of it.
Right, yeah. So why is this a focus of like the pro-life movement or, you know, Christianity, you know, in America? Like, why is this the focus and not the breadth of other things we could be doing to help alleviate the suffering of children?
If you want to take off, Steve, you could. We're past 8 now, so.
Sorry for being I don't know.
No, you're fine.
That's not fine.
William, maybe take a look at European. You mentioned European, and we got on the healthcare discussion with Europe. If you look at abortion rules in Europe, I think you'll find they're a lot more restrictive on abortion than the United States has ever been. Why that is the case is a puzzler, but
interesting.
They do have some strict rules over there for that.
And yet the Netherlands and Belgium are okay with euthanasia for children up to age 12.
Yeah.
To push back a little bit on something you said, Steve, earlier about the video of the abortion and you not being able to imagine yourself doing that and that kind of giving you this visceral reaction. I can relate. It definitely, there's a feeling that's evoked there, but I think there is a similar feeling that's evoked when you see, you know, a cow getting slaughtered, or when you watch a video of a circumcision, or, you know, any of these other things.
All the time.
If you've never seen I've seen exactly one time, and I regret.
You got a whole playlist.
I was watching a documentary, and I was like, "Yikes!" That's when I flipped my opinion on it when I saw that. But I mean, I guess like my point is like you can have that kind of visceral, you know, reaction to things that doesn't necessarily like speak to the morality of it. I know you guys are kind of jumping on me for saying it feels like a different situation with the embryo versus the 9-month fetus.
My friend out west, Mark, he when he watched like cow mutilations, like the slaughterhouse, then he stopped eating meat. Like
that's where I'm at, man. For me, when I stopped eating meat, it was at first it was kind of like I just didn't really like the idea of factory farms. Like I'd read about them, and the first time I saw any of that footage, I actually wept. It was really, I mean, it's really horrendous what happened. And I don't think that of all, again, I'm not gonna like take up all night on this, but like I don't think that of all farms, like we worked on a farm and I was fine eating that meat. I didn't because I got sick earlier. I didn't want to like risk anything, but I'm fine with stuff like that. It's the factory farms in particular. I think it's just like horrible. Horrible. I don't know why. It's just that, you know, you see something like that and it does something to
Well,
you.
yeah, you get that experience, almost like a trauma thing. And then it's like, if you're going to eat that stuff, then every time it thinks of that image.
Yeah, man. No, it's for anytime I look at pigs, especially, man, pork in particular, really. I mean, I can't like even, I will probably never eat pork again in my life, like ever, even when I start eating some meat again. I'll eat fish. I can eat fish again for sure, but I don't think I'll ever eat pork again.
What about a factory farmed fish?
Not a fan of that for environmental reasons, mostly.
Oh, okay.
Mostly for environmental reasons.
I thought I would ask. All right, we'll wrap it up here.
It's a good conversation. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're good.
I guess